Okay, welcome to today's video on antimatter, mainly looking as per at the AQA A-level syllabus. So we're going to go through what we can do on antimatter today. So basically, everything in the universe is made up of two things, matter and antimatter. And by pure scientific convention, we only know about matter. So this is stuff like the proton, a neutron, and all of that kind of stuff, the electron, etc. So this is matter, okay? Now, we're going to look at the electron right now. So this is a bit of matter. We all know it has a negative charge, so minus VE charge. We all know its mass, so it's 9.11 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus 27 kilograms, and we know all of that. Now, basically, everything has something which we call an antiparticle. So the electron has an antiparticle, and the antiparticle of the electron is equal to a positron. So, what do we know about the positron? Well, a positron is like this. It will have a positive charge, but it will have an equal mass as the electron. So I have 9.11 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus 27 kilograms. Okay, and we actually use this in real life in something called a PET scan. You might have heard of it. It happens in hospitals mainly, and that stands for positron emitting tomography. So you should probably know that this is a use for antiparticles in England mainly, or just any hospital really. And this is where the antiparticle of the electron is basically scanned, and it's used mainly for brain scans. So they're the important bit to know, that you can use a PET scan to scan the brain, and it uses this thing. So what actually happens is you have a substance like this, and it basically becomes this. So this is the equation for it. I would suggest that you know it, but there's no issue with not knowing it. So this is a electron neutrino, this is your positron. So you could also write it as E plus as well. That would be perfectly acceptable for me. So, Einstein was a very smart person, and everyone knows E equals mc squared, okay? And what that basically says is that every particle has a thing called a rest energy, okay? And you will know that something moving will have its kinetic energy, okay? So kinetic energy if you're moving. But if it's stationary, then this is where we get the rest energy. And we're going to call rest energy E0, and we're going to call it M0 c squared. So this is your rest mass, this is your rest energy, and this is obviously the speed of light squared, so it's 3 times 10 to the power of 8 meters per second squared. That's what that value will correspond to. So you can find out the rest energy and mass of a particle or its antiparticle with this information. And a very smart person as well, Paul Dirac, very important in the quantum revolution, basically says that antiparticles will always exist. So every particle will have an antiparticle. And it's important to know this. So it's just quite common knowledge, common sense really, that everything will have an antiparticle. So we can do this like this. Okay, and basically this is what will happen. It will annihilate the particle and itself if they meet, converting the total mass to photons. So basically, if a particle meets the antiparticle. So this is a particle, and this is the antiparticle. They will basically create a photon. So we can draw this on a nice little diagram like this. We can have a particle, fire in the antiparticle, and they will generate photons, which will conserve momentum. Remember, momentum is always conserved, that's why there is 2 photons. So momentum is conserved, so we get 2 photons produced. But, for example, if you have them moving like this, you could always have 1 photon produced. So that is possible, it just depends on the orientation of your setup, but it's quite common that 2 will be produced, so I think it's safe to assume that. And this thing is called annihilation. So it's where basically particle meets its antiparticle and it will produce 2 photons. So that's a nice easy way to do it. And actually the energy of the photon will have exactly the same rest mass as the particle, so this is the opposite, and it will have the opposite charge, so this is for the particle and antiparticles themselves. Now we also have this thing called pair production, which is equally as important, and that basically says that a photon can also become a particle and an antiparticle, so that will look a little bit like this, and that can fly off to the particle, and you can fly off to an antiparticle. There we go. So this one is pair production, and this one is annihilation. Very important just to know the difference, okay? And we're going to introduce you to a new unit for this. It's called 1 mega electron volt, which equals 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 13 joules. So just remember this unit. We'll talk about it more in the future, but you will often be asked to put it into units of electron volts in exam questions. So we're going to look at just one more thing, so annihilation. Well, it's important to know that the annihilation, the minimum photon energy, E0, will equal HF min. So you can find out the photon frequency and wavelength, okay? And for production, HF min will equal 2E0, I believe. So important to know these, and they'll be useful for calculations. So I hope you guys found this useful on matter and antimatter. I will try and release some questions soon.